This is a public call for written evidence to be submitted to a House of Lords committee. Committees run inquiries to scrutinise government policy. To do that, they take oral and written evidence on specific topics and consider it. They then publish a report with recommendations to government. The government must respond, and there will be in due course a parliamentary debate. Committees seek written evidence from people with an interest, experience, or expertise in a particular topic. The call for evidence will have several questions. You do not need to answer all questions.
Public Services Committee Inquiry. The transition from education to employment for young disabled people. The Public Services Committee is responsible for scrutinising public services, including health and education. It has launched an inquiry into the transition from education to employment for young disabled people. The committee invites contributions by 21st of September. The Department for Work and Pensions Family Resource Survey estimates that 24% of people report that they are disabled, including 11% of children. Many disabled people face barriers to accessing work. Disabled people are more likely to be unemployed or economically inactive than non-disabled people. A key transition in young disabled people's lives is leaving education and entering the workforce, possibly for the first time. This transition comes alongside a wider shift from services aimed at children and young people to services and benefits targeted at adults. Disabled people are more likely to choose to work in the public sector than non-disabled people. However, there have been reports of disabled people facing high levels of bullying and harassment in public service employers, including the NHS. The committee is interested in hearing about good and poor inclusive employment practices and how best practice could become the norm, considering best practice within and beyond the public sector in the UK and further afield. The committee also wants to hear about the support young disabled people receive throughout the move from education to employment, considering careers advice and guidance services in education settings, employment support programs aimed at working age disabled people, and how interlinked these services are or could be. The government provides support and incentives for employers to employ disabled people, such as the Disability Confidence Scheme. The committee wants to hear about how they could be improved or more widely understood. The committee is interested in hearing about what happens when employers do not meet their obligation to disabled workers. How effectively are the rights of disabled staff enforced? The committee will consider services and practices from across the UK. Who do we want to hear from? Anyone and everyone with an interest, experience, including lived experience, or expertise. The committee is particularly interested in hearing about the experiences and ideas of young disabled people who are currently going through the transition from education to employment, or those who have recent experience of this. We are seeking a wide range of views from people with different disabilities and health conditions. Please see the guidance for written evidence before you submit your evidence. The link is below. You can follow the progress of the inquiry at the committee's website, also linked below. It is not necessary to answer all the questions. Introductory question. Question 1. What barriers do young disabled people face when leaving education and entering the job market and workplace? Does this differ between different conditions or disabilities? And if so, how? Question 1a. How far do barriers to young disabled people accessing other public services, such as health and care services, present a barrier to young disabled people accessing the workplace? The following question is about the scope of the inquiry. Question 2. We have not focused this inquiry specifically on the experiences of young disabled people with an education, health and care plan when they leave education and enter employment. What are your thoughts on this approach? And are there particular benefits or drawbacks to it? What other focused approaches could the inquiry take? The following questions are about support for young disabled people. Question 3. How effectively do education systems provide careers advice, guidance and support which meets the needs and career aspirations of young disabled people? How could this be improved? And what examples of good practice are there in the UK and abroad? Question 3a. Do staff in schools and other education settings providing careers advice and guidance have the appropriate training and resources to support the needs and aspirations of young disabled people? Question 3b. How far do staff in education settings engage with employment support services and schemes such as access to work, supported internships, or disability employment advisors in order to support young disabled people? Question 4. How far do employment support mechanisms, such as access to work or disability employment advisors, meet the needs of young disabled people entering the job market for the first time? How could these services be improved? Question 4a. What is the first point that a young disabled person would engage with an employment support scheme? And how are such schemes communicated to young disabled people? Question 5. What is young disabled people's experience of the transition from education-based support to employment-related support? Do young disabled people face barriers to accessing support during this transition? Could these services be better linked? And if so, how? The following question is on public services as good employers. Question 6. How accessible are careers in public services to young disabled people when they are first entering the job market? Are there public services which very effectively recruit disabled people, and services where significant improvement is needed? Question 6a. What could public services employers learn from best practice elsewhere, including overseas, about recruiting and retaining young disabled people? What are the barriers to implementing such good practice? The following question is on support for employers. Question 7. How effective are government programs which support or encourage employers to employ disabled people, particularly young disabled people? Does this differ by condition or disability? How could they be improved? Question 7a. What steps could be taken to improve awareness and uptake of relevant government support schemes? Question 7b. What action could employers be taking without government support? What barriers prevent them from doing so? The following question is about the enforcement of the rights of disabled people in the workplace. Question 8. How effectively are the rights of disabled people upheld and enforced in the workplace? What barriers do young disabled people face in accessing the support, including legal support, that they need and are entitled to? How could enforcement mechanisms be improved? Question 8a. Is the present legal framework sufficient, in theory and in practice, in dealing with disability discrimination faced by young disabled people transitioning from education to work?
Guidance for submissions. Submissions can be made online using the written submission form linked to below this video. If you have difficulty making a submission online, wish to submit evidence in an alternative format, or would like to make a submission after the formal deadline, please contact the committee staff at the email address listed below this video. Should you wish to send a video of your evidence in British Sign Language, you can do so by emailing. A video can be translated and accepted as evidence. Submissions should be original and produced for the committee. Submissions that have been previously published will not be accepted as evidence. Short submissions are preferred. A submission longer than 6 pages should include a summary. Paragraphs should be numbered. Submissions should be in Microsoft Word or another editable format and should comprise a single file. Any annexes or appendices should be included in the same file. Evidence that is accepted by the committee may be published online at any stage. This will mean that your name and your evidence will be searchable. If you do not wish your submission to be published, you must explain your reasons. The final decision on whether to publish evidence rests with the committee. If you wish to include private or confidential information in your submission to the committee, please contact the clerk of the committee to discuss this before making your submission. All submissions made through the written submission form will be acknowledged automatically by email. Please complete the diversity monitoring form sent with this acknowledgement. Once evidence is published, it becomes subject to parliamentary copyright and is protected by parliamentary privilege. Once you have received a second email telling you that the evidence has been accepted, you may publicise or publish it yourself. In doing so, you must indicate that it was prepared for the committee. You should be aware that your publication or republication of your evidence may not be protected by parliamentary privilege. Personal contact details will be removed from evidence before publication, but will be retained by the committee office and used for specific purposes relating to the committee's work, for instance to seek additional information. Persons who submit written evidence and others may be invited to give oral evidence. Interpreters can be provided for this. Oral evidence is usually given in public at Westminster and broadcast online. Transcripts are also taken and published online. Persons invited to give oral evidence will be notified separately of the procedure to be followed and the topics likely to be discussed.